Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
One of the professions that rankers, and even saints, didn't want to see in wars, where each side numbered in the tens of thousands, was not a sorcerer or a wizard who could cast high-ranking spells that could decimate entire armies. Jeet the L test vels on no, v, Elben, c, no. Each kingdom had their own powerful mages that could do these things and more. The profession that they were afraid to face off the most was none other than a necromancer, especially necromancers that didn't care whether they were killing friends or foes. In the end, it didn't matter to them. The only thing that they trusted was the undead, and the more people that died, the more advantageous the battle was to them. Necromancers that had become high rankers were true menaces to fight. Saint-ranked necromancers were walking calamities. They specialized in curses, diseases, and otherworldly spells that made even their fellow saints didn't want to mess with them in large-scale wars unless it was a last resort. But that wasn't the most threatening thing about them. The thing that made necromancers, who had become rankers, scary were their abilities to raise the dead. Fighting against your former comrades at arms or family members could be the most traumatizing experience on the battlefield. That was why, if there was a war, and they were fighting against a necromancer, all the high-ranking fighters of the opposing side would eliminate them first, or else the war wouldn't end until everyone had been turned into the walking dead. Unfortunately, Lux still hadn't reached that rank. From an initiate, his rank had degraded to that of an apostle. Even if he had the animate undead skill, the most it could do was revive 50 undead. When he became an initiate, he could raise 200 undead warriors. When he became an E-ranker, he would be able to revive 2,000 of them. Every successive rank would multiply the numbers of undead he could raise by 2. The scary part about this was that he had the doppelganger skill, as well as Asmodeus, who also had the doppelganger skill. The moment Lux became a ranker, he would be able to command a horde of undead to fight for him. However, right now, he was an apostle that was fighting against rankers, whose strength and power outclassed him by several folds. Raising the dead would not be enough to tilt the tide of battle in his favor, so he did the only thing that he could do, and that was corpse explosion. The half-elf detonated the corpses that he had buried in strategic locations in the ground. He did that to ensure that he would be able to maximize the effect of his skill and kill as many Amarian soldiers as he could. The battle had started less than an hour ago, yet the half-elf had already killed thousands of soldiers. But he wasn't satisfied with mere grunts. His target was not General Phobus, who was the highest commanding officer of the Amarian army in the territory that they were fighting in. No, he was after the bigger fish, and the same person that killed him and his friends a few days ago. Found you. Lux narrowed his eyes as his great flame skull, Lazarus, who was hidden near the top of a tree in the woodland, locked his eyes on the retreating ranker, who was making sure that General Phobus wouldn't be killed by the explosions that were happening around them. General Fahad, if you want to win this war, order your men to pursue them, Lux said as he pointed in the direction where the two rankers of the Amarian kingdom were. It's now or never, you won't get a second chance. General Fahad knew that Lux was right. This was the perfect opportunity to strike, so he immediately ordered his cavalry to accompany him in pursuit of the two generals that had managed to capture their previous headquarters. All men, rally to me, General Fahad shouted as he climbed on top of his warhorse. Kill them all. General Fahad led the charge, and the others immediately followed. Go with them, but stick together, Lux ordered. Your goal is not to target the rankers, but eliminate the soldiers. Also, keep a lookout for our dear friends. If you see them, don't hesitate to kill them. We are standing on opposing sides. Mercy will only get you killed. All of his comrades nodded their heads in agreement to Lux's words. Even Malcolm and Henrietta, who still had reservations about killing their acquaintances, steeled themselves for the inevitable possibility of clashing blades with each other. But Ivir, Lux shouted. A dragon roar answered his call, and the dragon knight landed by his side. Sigh, I'm taking Fei Fei with me, Lux stated. She will be staying with Bidivir and observing the battle from the sky. That way, you can fight without worrying about her safety. Thank you. Sai felt relieved because it didn't really want to take Fei Fei onto the chaotic battlefield, because there was a possibility that it would be facing off against stronger enemies. If it was alone, the boar was confident that it could retreat safely out of harm's way at any given time. Fei Fei understood Lux and Kay's intentions, so she jumped on the half-elf's shoulder, as the latter sat on the back of Bidivir's dragon. Whatever happens, prioritize your safety, Lux said. We will clear this dungeon together. Let General Fahad and his deputy deal with General Phobus in second. We'll think of a way to kill them when they've been weakened. Let's go. Bidivir, the dragon flapped its wings and soared towards the sky. Although Lux had night vision, what he could see from on top of the cliff was still limited, so he decided to view the battle from above. That way, He would be able to make appropriate decisions and deal with the enemy in real time. As the Dragon Knight commanded his mount to go to the direction where Lux wanted to go, the situation on the ground had changed once again as the Yellen light cavalry caught up with the retreating Amarian soldiers and started a massacre. "Don't let him out of our sights," Lux ordered Bidivir, who was eyeing the two escaping Amarian generals on the ground. "Yes, my lord," Bidivir replied. "It's a shame that we can't use dragon breath to ignite the entire woodlands to block their path of escape. The wind is blowing against us, and I'm afraid that the dense smoke will hinder the light cavalry in their pursuit." Lux nodded in agreement. "Don't worry, we made ample preparations beforehand." There was another reason why Lux decided to hunt down the scouts that were tasked to monitor the movements of the Yellen camp. He wanted to plant Aekos bone bombs in the middle of the woodlands, so he could detonate it when the enemies made their escape. "Go Aeko," Lux said as the Amarian soldiers finally reached the location where the bombs were planted. "Boom boom Bakugan," Aeko shouted from on top of Lux's head. Immediately, loud booming sounds reverberated in the woodlands as rock, dirt, flesh, and blood splattered throughout the surroundings. Screams of pain, frustration, and disbelief echoed in the dark night as Lux once again activated his ability, which was responsible for making the Amarian army turn in full retreat. Corpse explosion. A new round of pain, suffering, and death spread across the battlefield as the bodies of the fallen exploded, dealing necrotic damage and sending shrapnel of sharp bones to the terrified soldiers, who were trying their best to outrun the person that was in front of them in order to have a higher chance of survival. Running was the only thing they could think of at the moment, and they hoped that if they ran fast enough, they would be able to wake up from the nightmare that took the lives of their friends and acquaintances, leaving nothing except their dying screams behind. The representatives of each faction, who were watching the battle unfold from the entrance of the domain of the fallen, all had solemn expressions on their faces. When the Amarian army had overrun the Yellen camp a few days ago, all of them cheered because their teenagers were part of the successful raid that transpired. They didn't care about Lux back then because he had been sent to the Central Plains, and it was quite a distance away from where their young members were fighting. However, after days of traveling, the half-elf finally arrived at the Eastern Front, and immediately showed them what he was capable of. And what they saw was something they didn't want to see. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared at the entrance of the Gate of the Fallen, which caused some of the representatives to sigh. Gerald also felt very bitter inside because, among the 15 people that belonged to their subsidiary guild, Storm Dragons, 6 had already died in the battle, leaving only 9 behind. As the commander of Wildjard's stronghold, he knew that what Lux was doing was the right thing to do. Even he would do the same. So although his heart was weeping, he accepted the fact that the Storm Dragons Guild, and the factions of the Skystead Alliance, the Zinner War Pact, and the Six Kingdoms were currently the half-elf's enemies. If only Nero had decided to join Lux, this outcome might have been avoided. Natasha sighed. "I think this is better," Rainer commented. "Since we don't know which side will win in the end, having eggs in different baskets balances things out." Gerald and Natasha could only nod at Rainer's words. No matter what they said right now, it would not change anything. Visit and Velben, CM for Uevels. The 6 members of the Storm Dragons Guild stood by their side and looked at the battle that was happening through the eyes of those that were still alive within the sacred dungeon. Although they didn't want to admit it, they were starting to regret that they didn't choose to follow Lux when the latter decided to switch sides to the Yellen army. A member of the Skystead Alliance panted for breath as he ran away with all of his might. There were cuts that were still dripping blood on his face, shoulders, and legs, due to the bone shrapnel that flew towards him when all of the soldiers near him exploded right in front of his eyes. Because of the chaos that was happening around them, he and his team members had been separated from each other. He didn't even know if they were still alive because bodies were exploding all over the place, and nowhere was safe. It was at that moment when he heard a faint clicking sound behind him. The next moment, he found himself falling face first on the ground, which surprised him. His vision spun until it came to a complete stop, making him look at his own body, which no longer had a head. The moment he realized what happened was also when the light faded from his eyes. His body, which was standing just half a minute ago, fell to the ground and disappeared into particles of light. More clinking sounds were heard in the darkness as more heads rolled across the woodland floor. This continued for a time before the sound stopped completely. "It's quite unfortunate, but this is life," Keen said softly as he walked away, melding with the darkness. "Next time, make the right choice when choosing a side." On another part of the battlefield, something similar was happening as soldiers found themselves being cut apart by nearly invisible threads that were as sharp as a sword blade. Val stood on top of a tree branch and spun silky spider threads in his surroundings, creating a lethal trap for the soldiers who had lost their sense of direction. A man who was running at full speed was sliced in half upon unknowingly meeting the death trap that was created by one of the most narcissistic young men from the Six Kingdoms. If not for the fact that he could transform into an abominable spider monster, girls would definitely flock to him due to how handsome he was. Unfortunately, upon seeing his true form at the tournament, all of them realized that Val might eat them for lunch if they annoyed him by accident. The sound of trees falling to the ground spread in the surroundings as two war axes mowed down the soldiers that were running away. These war axes were like boomerangs that returned to the hands of the barbarian prince, who had a fearless smile on his face. It's been a while since I felt this way, Einar grinned. I knew that joining Lux was a good idea. Currently, the barbarian was riding on top of a saber-toothed tiger, which was one of the 4 mounts he could summon. Let's go. We need to get more merit points in order to get better rewards. Einar urged his mount to pursue the fleeting soldiers, who had lost their chain of command. Not far from him, panic screams were heard as soldiers from the Amarian army tried to zigzag through the trees in order to slow down the 4-meter-tall boar that was chasing after them without mercy. Stop, we're on the same side, a teenage girl, whose robes were stained with blood shouted as she tried to reason with the boar, who was charging straight at her. I am one of Malcolm's team members. Did you forget me? No, I didn't forget you, Sai shouted as it increased its speed. It's because I know you that I'm taking you down first. Why won't you understand our reason? My superiors are watching you right now. Don't you fear their retribution? I don't know the meaning of fear, Sai shouted as it impaled the young lady's body with its tusk. All I know is that all of you stand in my way, so die. The young lady from the Skystead Alliance didn't die right away, and suffered a very painful death as Sai continued its relentless charge, impaling the fleeing soldiers who had lost their will to fight. I'm charging, Sai roared as it continued to pick off the stragglers, who had been left behind by their comrades. From above the sky of the woodlands, boom boom boom, boom boom, Aiko and Fei Fei were throwing blast bombs from the sky. They weren't aiming at anything in particular but simply throwing blast bombs everywhere because Lux had ordered them to do so. The half-elf, on the other hand, was also using his skill, corpse explosion, and detonating the corpses that Sid and his undead minions had buried earlier. Although General Phobus and Second had their share of Lux's destructive ability, they were wearing protective artifacts that mitigated the damage they received, so they only suffered very minor injuries. Although Lux was a bit disappointed about this outcome, he also understood that he had already done his best. I'll just delay their retreat so that General Fahad can catch up to them, Lux thought. They're also almost out of the woodlands. That is where the real battle will start. But Ivir navigated his mount to soar higher in the sky as they prepared to intercept General Phobus and Second the moment they left the woodlands. Although their opponents were rankers, they couldn't do anything to them if they were outside their strike range. Lux, Ivir, Aiko, and Fei Fei, on the other hand, had skills that could harass them from the sky. He had ordered his team to not fight against General Phobus and Second because the vice-general could easily kill them without giving them a chance to fight back. Because of this, the others just focused on the Amarian soldiers, as well as the members of the different factions that had initially entered the sacred dungeon with them. Lux had assigned Sid to look after Henrietta and assigned Ishtar to look after Sai. He was worried that the two would get carried away, despite the fact that their ranks had degraded back to Grade Apostle. Just to make sure that the two would not accidentally die, he ordered his 2 subordinates to keep track of their actions. The Great Flame Skull, Lazarus, also had a role, and that was to support Keen, Einar, and Val if they needed it, but for the most part, he kept himself well hidden, as he blinked from tree to tree, waiting for the right time to strike to lend them his assistance. Lux had prepared other trump cards beforehand, and he was only waiting for the right opportunity to use them. He believed that if he allowed General Phobus and Second to escape tonight, the opportunity to kill the two of them would slip away from his hands for good. Just what is happening, Second? General Phobus asked as he urged his mount to retreat as fast as he could. Aren't the woodlands under our control? After capturing the Yellen army's headquarters during their night raid several days ago, General Phobus' confidence reached its peak. He was certain that before the week was over, he would finally be able to get rid of the Yellen army and reclaim one of the towns that used to belong to their nation. He could already imagine getting the most merits in the war. General Phobus was sure that his family would shower him with praises, and his achievement would allow their clan to rise above the rest, and to be given accolades from the royal family. Read latest of LS at NVEL by com. Unfortunately, this dream was shattered a few minutes ago when explosions started to erupt all around them, breaking their formation, as well as forcing them to give the order to retreat. As much as General Phobus and Second wanted to regain law and order, it was simply not possible due to the fact that anyone who stood a few meters from another would be caught up in the corpse explosions, further expanding the destruction and death that was sweeping through the woodlands. Before everyone went to full retreat, Second only gave one order, and that was to scatter. That was the only order that everyone followed, because it was the only thing they could do. To a certain extent, it worked. However, Lux had also anticipated this move, so he detonated the corpses that had been buried all over the woodlands, killing as many people as possible, and expanding the corpse explosion area of effect. I have heard about this strategy before, Second replied. This was how General Moriarty was defeated in the kingdom's previous campaign. I didn't think that it would reappear on our battlefield. General Phobus' face paled because he finally remembered what his father had said about Moriarty's latest defeat. According to the few survivors that managed to escape that horrifying ordeal, the Yellen army detonated the corpses of their own men in order to wipe out General Moriarty's army. The soldiers doubted the credibility of this news, but the generals of the Amarian kingdom took it seriously. Because of this, they had added several powerful clerics to the ranks of the battlefield at the Great Plains, allowing them to study the real method that the Yellen army had used back then. However, the technique that the Yellen army had used to defeat General Moriarty never appeared again, causing them to almost forget it. General Phobus finally understood what they were up against, and it made him hold the reins of his mount tighter. Necromancer, General Phobus hissed. Second nodded. For now, our priority is to escape. As long as we can make it back to our main camp, we will be able to reorganize our troops. We are almost out of the woodlands now, General Phobus said. Just a little more. A minute later, General Phobus and Second's mounts broke through the woodlands, allowing them to run in an open field. However, before the general could feel relieved, his second-in-command pushed him off of his mount, making him fall to the ground. Before General Phobus could even curse at his right-hand man and ask him what the hell he was doing, 3 dragon breaths descended from the sky and incinerated his mount, making the great tiger roar in pain. The great tiger was a rank 5 alpha monster, so it didn't die from the 3 dragon breaths. However, it was seriously injured, making it roar angrily towards the sky. If its attackers were only within its strike range, it would have already attacked them without holding back. Master, you are amazing, Bedivere said. You ordered us to aim at the mount because you anticipated that General Phobus would be saved by his subordinate, right? Not real, I mean. Yes, it is all part of the plan, Lux replied as he gazed at the ground. I just thought that General Phobus might be wearing protective charms just like General Moriarty had been back then, preventing us from landing a killing blow. Since that was the case, dealing with the mount was the best way to delay his escape, allowing General Fahad to catch up to them. Second narrowed his eyes as he looked up at the sky. He specialized in close combat, and although he had a ranged ability, their enemy was outside of his strike range. Lux looked down on the vice-general, who had killed him with a solemn expression on his face. There were times when he would remember that moment of dying so vividly that he would recreate it over and over in his head, trying to think of a way to prevent it from happening. However, no matter what countermeasures he thought of, they were not enough to surpass the difference in rank, as well as the vice-general's uncanny speed, which had given him no time to react whatsoever. Because of this, he was very wary of Second and only dared to fight him in a way that his sword would fail to reach him. Aiko, Fei, do it, Lux ordered. Immediately, the 2 baby slimes started throwing their blast bombs. Just like Lux's earlier order, it didn't matter if they hit their targets or not. What they need to do is create a sense of tension, delaying General Phobus, as well as Second's escape. From the sky, the half-elf could see General Fahad's elite cavalry unit closing in on the 2 generals. According to their earlier agreement, Lux would stall General Phobus and Second's escape, while General Fahad and his men would send an elite unit to pursue them, leaving the retreating Amarian soldiers to the other commanders of his army. Their goal was to capture or kill the general and vice-general, in order to finally end the battle on the eastern front. Just as Bedivere was about to circle in the sky to make another attempt for a dragon's breath, a black lightning bolt shot out from the woodland, almost hitting his dragon mount. Fortunately, the Dragon Knight's sixth sense was able to warn him of the sneak attack from behind, allowing him to maneuver his mount at the last second in order to evade it. Lux shifted his gaze in the direction where the black lightning bolt came from and narrowed his eyes. Nero, Lux muttered when he saw the guild master of the Storm Dragons Guild. The last time they fought was during the tournament, and the 2 of them had not had any interactions with each other, save the last time they'd come to the dungeon. Lux had been busy creating his guild, while Nero had dedicated himself to getting stronger. So, you're still alive, Nero said as black lightning bolts snaked around his hands and arms. This time, I won't lose to you. The strongest member of the young generation from Wildjard's stronghold, who used to look down on Lux, was now looking up at him. To this day, he didn't know how the sickly half-elf was able to become strong and beat him in the tournament. However, that was no longer important to him. Now that an opportunity had come for him to legitimately fight him again, The proud guild master of the Storm Dragons Guild decided to personally kill the half-elf and end his heart's demon once and for all. "Master, what are we going to do?" Bedivere asked. "That kid means business." Lux frowned. He knew that Nero could potentially make them fall from the sky with his long-range attacks. The touch of the abyss could be resisted by dragons to a certain extent, but Bedivere was riding on a young dragon, and he didn't know if the flying mount could withstand a full-powered lightning bolt that came from an initiate. "Go higher," Lux ordered. "Our goal is not to fight him. I'll deal with his lightning bolts, so you continue harassing the generals." Bedivere heeded his master's orders and urged his dragon mount to fly higher in the sky. Seeing that Lux had no intention to fight him, Nero fired consecutive lightning bolts at the dragon in an attempt to hit its wings to make it fall to the ground. However, Lux countered his lightning bolts with his elemental shield, as well as spinning blades. Just as Nero was about to fire another lightning bolt at the dragon in the sky, he suddenly stopped his attack and jumped to the side. It was at that moment when a blazing arrow landed on the place where he once stood and exploded. However, it was not over yet. While Nero was in mid-air, he saw a great flame skull appear in front of him with its mouth wide open. A moment later, a blast of freezing air erupted in the surroundings, sending ice crystals everywhere. However, Nero had transformed his body into a black lightning bolt and barely evaded the surprise attack that came out of nowhere. Seeing that his attack had missed his target, Lazarus blinked away, while Ishtar merged with the shadows. They would not allow anyone to get in the way of their master, so the two decided to team up and bring Nero down for good. Seeing that he was unable to continue attacking the half-elf, Nero decisively left the scene to escape. The guild master of the Storm Dragons Guild had sensed that a powerful ranker was approaching him from behind, and guessed that it was the enemy's general that was heading in his direction. Since that was the case, he prioritized escaping over attacking the half-elf. He had seen how Lux was killed by the vice-general, and vowed to himself that he wouldn't die in the same manner. However, before he left, he gave the half-elf one last glance, and to his surprise, the half-elf was also looking straight at him. "Next time," Nero said before turning into a black lightning bolt and escaping far away. Lux glanced in the direction Nero had escaped to and nodded his head. "Next time, you will not be able to escape," Lux said before shifting his attention to General Phobus, who was now riding Second's warhorse. The vice-general was simply running beside the mount, using his speed to keep up with it. "Such a loyal person," Bedivere said. "That trait is very rare even among the retainers of high-ranking nobles in the Vahan Empire." "Is it?" Lux asked with curiosity. "Yes," Bedivere replied. "I was once like him, but in the end, I was betrayed by my own liege. I'm guessing he is born of common birth, or his family is a retainer of Phobus' family. That is the only reason I can think of why a man of his caliber is sticking with that failure of a general. I plan to kill him though." "That will be better, master. If you can make him part of your covenant, you will have another strategist aside from Asmodeus." "I'll consider it." Lux had indeed wanted to kill Second, but he never thought of adding him to his necromancer covenant. Now that Bedivere had brought it up, the half-elf was starting to think that it was not a bad idea. Aiko, who was on top of Lux's head, narrowed her gaze as she looked at the vice-general, who was running alongside the warhorse that was carrying General Phobus. She could still remember how Second killed her papa, and it made her very distraught. Although she fared better than Fei, deep inside, Aiko carried a deep-seated grudge against the person that killed one of the most important people in her life. "Master, if this continues, I think they will be able to escape," Bedivere frowned as they pursued the fleeting general. "Don't worry," Lux said as he summoned Pazuzu and Orion. "He won't be going anywhere." The Jade Golem descended from the sky and crashed towards the ground like a meteor. Pazuzu, on the other hand, dove down from the sky and pointed his spiked mace at General Phobus, who was riding on top of the warhorse. Duel. General Phobus suddenly felt a strong pull coming from behind him. Although his hands were firmly holding the reins of his mount, he could feel his body sliding off the horse's body. Finally, as if his body had a mind of its own, the great general slid off the horse's back before turning around to run in Pazuzu's direction. "You bastard!" General Phobus summoned his lance and swung it against the fortress defenders, who had activated his shield wall ability. The giant blue tower shield clashed against General Phobus' strike and shattered like a wine glass getting hit by a baseball bat. The momentum of the strike didn't pause and smashed against the shield in Pazuzu's hand, sending the fortress defender flying. The fortress defender's body didn't even manage to land on the ground before turning into particles of light. Although General Phobus was a fake ranker, he was still a ranker, and his stats easily overwhelmed the demonic defender, who served as the tanker in Lux's undead army. "Sorry Pazuzu," Lux said in his heart. "I thought that only Second was a threat, but I guess General Phobus' stats are similar or even higher than him." Orion, who saw one of his comrades dying with a single strike, remained firm as he prepared his strongest attack. Duel. Lux's Jade Golem also activated his taunt skill, forcing General Phobus to exchange one blow with him. "You puny insects!" General Phobus roared in anger as he once again swung his lance with his full power. "Stop messing with me!" Orion didn't back away, and unleashed his strongest attack without holding back. "Gaia Smash!" Orion shouted. A moment later, the lance and the giant jade fist collided with each other, sending a shockwave in their surroundings. General Phobus grunted as he was forced to take one step back due to the force behind Orion's blow. Orion's right hand and arm broke apart, but the latter ignored it and raised his left fist to punch General Phobus' face. But before he could do that, Second appeared in front of him and slashed his sword down. Lux's expression became grim when he saw Orion's body, cut cleanly in half by the vice-general, who had come to his lord's aid. Two of his named creatures died so easily, showing him how powerful rankers truly were. Fortunately, although Pazuzu and Orion died, they were able to complete their mission. Bedivir's dragon mount had unleashed a dragon breath and burned the warhorse that the general was using as his mount. Now that their means of travel was dead, their escape would be significantly slowed down. Suddenly, the sound of dozens of hooves galloping from the woodlands was heard. "Finally, they're here," Lux said with relief as General Fahad and his elite unit emerged from the woodlands, making General Phobus' expression become extremely pale. "We finally met, Phobus," General Fahad roared as he and his soldiers charged towards the flustered general. "Get behind me, my lord," Second said as he stood in front of General Phobus, with a fearless expression on his face. "Since the enemy general has delivered himself to us, this is a good opportunity for us to take his head." "Ha! Take it if you can," General Fahad sneered. "Benjamin, you take care of Phobus. I'll handle this man." "Yes, General, his right-hand man," Benjamin replied. General Fahad could sense that the man protecting General Phobus was very strong, so he decided to take him on himself. Lux, who had done his part, summoned his soul book. The half-elf had merged his map projector with his Elysium compendium, and merged the compendium with his soul book. Although the compendium had a built-in map, the map projector, which was a pseudo-legendary item that Sherlock had given him in the past, had a wider range. Lux had marked Nero in his map, and could see that the latter was slowly circling his way back to the battlefield. The half-elf knew what the latter was planning, and that was to launch a sneak attack on General Fahad, or his aide, Benjamin, in order to give General Phobus and Second an advantage. Up TED chapters and in Velben, com. If one of the rankers of the Yellen army was taken down, the other ranker would die not long after. This development would overturn all the efforts they had made in the war, and it was something that Lux wouldn't allow. What a troublesome opponent, Lux thought as he asked Bedivere to fly in Nero's direction. He would personally deal with this variable first and prevent anyone from changing the outcome of the war. As for whether General Fahad would be able to beat Second, or whether Benjamin would be able to beat General Phobus, this was no longer in his hands. "They're still out there, so I'll just leave the rest to them," Lux thought as he gazed in the direction where Nero was hiding. He was not fighting this war alone. He had comrades who were very capable individuals. Although their ranks had degraded back to the apostle grade, he believed that Sai, Keen, and the others would not let the chance of getting the last hit on General Phobus slip through their fingers. After all, the rewards they would gain for defeating a general was something that would allow them to regain what they had lost after being killed by the vice-general, who was currently exchanging deadly blows with the general of the Yellen army. "Is that the ability that allowed you to conquer the other gates as well?" Nero asked as he looked at the dragon that was hovering above his head. "Who knows?" Lux replied as he jumped off the dragon's back and landed several meters away from Nero. Nero grabbed the artifact that allowed others to see the things he saw and heard from his chest, and crushed it. This was to ensure that no one would see what was going to happen next. "I've always hated you, Lux. You were only able to reach your current rank because you were born lucky," Nero stated. "Your grandma fished you out of the river and brought you back to Wildjard's stronghold to raise. Despite the fact that you were a cripple, she still loved you and treated you like family. If you weren't there in the tournament, Iris' fiancé would have definitely been me. I would have become the saint's son-in-law and my future would have been limitless. Having beauty, power, and influence by my side, my rise was guaranteed, and yet, all of that disappeared because of your existence." Lux smirked and clapped his hands after hearing Nero's words. "Salty much?" Lux asked after clapping a few times. "You bastard half-elf. You have no idea on what it's like to be born a commoner." Nero clenched his fists, making crackling sounds as he glared at the half-elf in front of him. "You do not know how many times I had to bow my head just to get the chance to enter Elysium. Someone as lucky as you won't understand my hardships. If only you didn't exist, everything you have now should have been mine." Dark mist surrounded Nero's body as the power of Abyss took hold of his heart. Lux knew full well what it was like to be consumed by such power, because he had experienced it firsthand in the past. If not for the fact that Kiaza had appeared to save him, he might have already lost his mind and became an abyssal monster who only wanted to destroy everything around him. But, although Nero was tapping into the power of the abyss, he didn't allow himself to be consumed by it completely. After being defeated by Lux, the guildmaster of the Storm Dragons Guild trained tirelessly to control his abyssal powers, allowing him to only draw the power he needed, without falling into corruption. It seems that Sir Raynor taught him to control his abyssal powers well, Lux thought as he looked at Nero, whose strength had drastically increased. This is going to be a bit troublesome. Those who chose to wield the power of the abyss knew the risk of gaining such a power. Because of this, they would train themselves to resist falling into temptation, and only draw out the power they needed. Fall 0W current novels on N.O.V. 3L.B. in Co. M. Although the seed of the abyss had taken root deep in Nero's heart, he still hadn't forgotten his ambitions to become the strongest among the young generation. And for that to happen, he would have to slay the half-elf in front of him, in order to break free of his heart's demon. Before I kill you, tell me one thing, Nero growled. When you died, did your rank deteriorate? Yes, Lux replied as he coated his body with his personal battle regalia that he had used when he fought against Nero in the tournament. This will be enough of a handicap to fight against you. Don't think I'll show you mercy just because you are weaker than me? Weaker? What a joke. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Lux didn't care if his rank was now a realm lower than Nero. He wasn't the same half-elf that would always faint just because his body had reached its limit. Things had changed since he entered Elysium, and right now, although Nero's rank was higher than him, that didn't mean that the brown-haired boy could overpower him. After all, his profession was a necromancer, and his body constitution was the immortal dragon conqueror's legacy. Master, do you need help? Bedivere asked. No, Lux replied. Just keep a lookout in the surroundings, and prevent anyone from interfering with our battle. Bedivere nodded. Understood. Lux and Nero stared at each other for nearly half a minute before both of them took a step forward and charged at each other. Nero transformed into a black lightning bolt and reappeared in front of Lux, delivering a punch clad with lightning to the half-elf's chest. Lux didn't back away and transformed his hands into dragon claws and punched Nero as well. Two resounding thuds spread in the surroundings as both of their attacks connected with each other's bodies. Both of them could have dodged each other's attacks if they wanted to, but both of them wanted to prove something, and that was they were not afraid to take a hit from the person they wanted to defeat. Both took a step back, but soon recovered to strike against their enemy a second time. Nero, who thought that Lux would suffer tremendous damage from his attack, was surprised that the half-elf was still standing, and managed to strike back at him as well. Both of them had the power of the abyss, and their attacks could easily bypass almost all defenses, dealing direct damage to the soul. As the two exchanged several more blows without even bothering to block or evade them, their bodies started to accumulate damage over time. However, in the end, it was Nero who broke away first as he distanced himself from Lux as he clutched his chest with a hand. How? Nero asked as blood spilled from the corner of his lips. You are only at the apostle rank, and I'm at the initiate rank. How are you able to endure my attacks? Lux wiped the blood that had also spilled from the corner of his lips with the back of his hand as he looked at his adversary, who had a shocked expression on his face. Because you're not me, Lux replied. Lucky? Yes, I consider myself lucky. I was raised with love despite my weak body constitution. Do you know how much I envied you back then? You were the strongest teenager in Wildjard's stronghold, and everyone looked up to you. There were days when I wished I was you, but I never felt salty about it. All I did was constantly train myself, so that one day, I would also get a chance to visit Elysium, and make my grandma proud of me. Lux wanted to say that he and Nero were different not because his rank was higher than his, but because their constitution was different from each other. An initiate was equivalent to a rank 5 monster. However, even among monsters of the same rank, there were vast differences between them, especially when it came to the type of monster they were. A rank 5 dragon was very different from a human that had achieved the initiate rank. Although they were of the same rank, the dragon was still superior because of its race. Also, dragons and other mythical creatures were very resistant to the attack of the abyss. Not to mention, Lux's health and defense was higher than Nero's because of the boosts he got from his passive skills. Dragon's Heart, X, and Dragon Scale, X, less than Dragon Scale, X, greater than, makes your skin as hard as dragon scales. Greatly increase physical and magical defense, as if you were wearing a set of armor that covers your entire body. Reduces physical and magical damage by 50%, less than Dragon's Heart, X, greater than, increase your health by 30,000 points. Increase health and stamina regeneration by 100%. When facing an opponent stronger than you, health and stamina regeneration will be boosted to 200% health and stamina regeneration. Gain selective lesser immunity passive ability. You may only choose one lesser immunity passive. Once you do, You can no longer change the passive immunity that you have chosen. Selective lesser immunity. Greatly gain increased resistance to chosen lesser immunity. Chosen lesser immunity will automatically decrease the damage you will receive from the chosen option by 30%. Less than chosen lesser immunity. Physical attacks greater than. All damage acquired from physical attacks will automatically be decreased by 30%. Even if the two of them were to fight a slugfest, Lux the Beast Touch dealt more damage to Nero because the latter had no way of countering its effects. If Lux's remaining health points were in the 100s, Nero's health was down to the 30s. This was the difference in their body constitution, allowing Lux to have the upper hand in close combat. In truth, Lux was happy that Nero destroyed the artifact on his chest because this was something that he didn't want others to see. As a necromancer, everyone thought that they could easily take them out if they managed to isolate him away from his summons. What they didn't know was that Lux was just as deadly as his summons because he wasn't a frail mage that would die just because someone punched him in the gut. Even now, Lux's regeneration abilities were doing wonders to his body since the opponent he was facing had a higher rank than him. Nero couldn't believe that, since his rank was higher than Lux's, the latter was able to last longer than him. You still want to continue? Lux asked in a teasing tone. I can do this all day. Although the half-elf was smiling, his body was racked with pain. However, seeing the disbelief on Nero's face was enough for him to break into a smile despite his suffering. You and I now stand at opposite sides, Nero replied. We have nothing to talk about. Only one side can win, and that will be me. Nero unleashed a powerful aura, which made Lux take a fighting stance in order to counter it. However, just as he thought that Nero was going to attack him, the latter decisively ran away, leaving him behind. When Nero escaped the first time, Lux didn't think much about it, because General Fahad had almost arrived in his location. However, this time, his enemy decisively left the battlefield until he could no longer see Nero's blinking dot on the map of his soul book. I guess the damage to his soul is significant enough for him to retreat, Lux muttered. Our ability to control the power of the abyss depends on our mood, as well as the state of our body. Since he took all my blows head on, his soul must have been seriously injured, making him unable to keep the power of the abyss from overwhelming his senses. He decisively chose to retreat instead of continuing to fight me because he was afraid he would lose control and fall into abyssal corruption. It seems that he also received injury from my corpse explosion and was already suffering from internal injuries before our battle. In truth, Lux was surprised because Nero's blows earlier weren't as strong as he expected. His movements were also a bit sluggish and he only compensated them by using the power of the abyss, allowing him to fight despite his injuries. I should have used Duel. Lux scratched his head at the unexpected outcome of his battle with Nero. Master, are you alright? Badivir asked as soon as his dragon mount landed on the ground. Ha! Aiko shouted before jumping on top of Lux's head, making sure that he was alright. I'm fine, Lux replied. Let's go back to the battlefield. I want to see how everyone is doing. Less than ding, greater than. Less than Sai has managed to deal the finishing blow to General Phobus greater than. Secondary quest. Killing lions. Number of enemy generals killed. 1. Rewards. 1 million gold coins, sent directly to your inventory. 1 pseudo-legendary equipment of your choice. Go and look for Great General Watson and Great General Sherlock to receive your rewards. Good job, Sai. For some reason, Lux wasn't surprised that Sai was the one that managed to deal the killing blow to General Phobus. He always thought that the bowler's luck was only a rank or two lower than Iris, allowing it to gain many great opportunities whenever the two of them were together. However, General Phobus was not Lux's major concern. It was none other than the Vice-General, who was the true mastermind behind the campaign on the Eastern Front. As long as Second wasn't killed, the half-elf wouldn't be able to rest easy, so he hurriedly jumped on the dragon's back and urged Badivir to fly back to where they left General Fahad and the others. He might have allowed Nero to escape, but there was no way in hell that he would allow the Vice-General to see Tamora's sunrise. His only regret was that he was unable to pinpoint the Vice-General's location on the map, which was filled with red blinking dots regardless of where he looked. Several minutes before Lux and Nero fought against each other. Surrender, Phobus, Benjamin, who served as General Fahad's second in command, said after he and General Phobus exchanged blows. On the first strike alone, Benjamin already understood that although General Phobus was a ranker, he was no match against him. Surrender. General Phobus sneered. I am Phobus of the Farbridge family. I will never surrender. Is that so? Benjamin returned General Phobus' sneer with his own. Very well. I will accept your head with gratitude. Now die. Benjamin was an expert spear master that had fought countless campaigns against the Vahan Empire. For him, dealing with General Phobus wasn't a difficult thing. At least, that was what he thought at the beginning. However, the longer they fought, the more Benjamin realized that his opponent had many powerful artifacts, protecting him from getting fatally injured. In fact, due to General Phobus knowing that he would be able to withstand his enemy's killing blows, he allowed Benjamin to hit him, while he counterattacked using his halberd, drawing blood each time he traded blows with the spear master. Despicable, Benjamin said as he backed away, while his right shoulder bled after being grazed by General Phobus' counterattack. Second, who was paying close attention to General Phobus' battle was almost blown away by General Fahad's strike due to not focusing on his own battle. Interesting. You still find the leeway to worry about your general despite the fact that you are fighting me, General Fahad said as he gripped his sword tightly. I don't know if that is because you're that confident in your skill, or you think too lowly of me. Second didn't reply and simply delivered a deadly strike to his opponent, forcing the latter to block it. General Fahad was confident in his strength, but his opponent excelled in speed, making it difficult for him to land a decisive blow. Each time the two of them clashed, the general of the Yellen army didn't want to admit it, but his opponent was slightly stronger than him, giving him a very hard time. While all of this was happening, a certain boar, that was only 2 feet tall, was sneakily making its way behind General Phobus, using the shrubs and the surroundings as cover. It knew that if it charged recklessly at its target, it would probably be sliced in half, and end up getting kicked out of the dungeon. Losing the opportunity to make a comeback, Sai planted its front legs firmly on the ground, and waited for the right opportunity to strike. On the outside, many people thought that Sai was annoying, shameless, obnoxious, thick-skinned, as well as an idiot, but that was only the persona it used to hide its true self. However, if that was what it truly was, it would have never become one of Iris' best friends. As the boar gazed at the battle waiting for an opportunity to strike, it was also paying close attention to General Phobus' reaction time, the way he fought, as well as the smallest mannerism that even General Phobus wasn't aware he had. Sai was able to see it as clear as day, allowing it to make a detailed plan in its mind where to land a decisive strike on its target. Keen, strike on my signal, Sai said through their guild chat, informing the skinny swordsman that was hiding in the distance to prepare his strongest attack. Okay, Keen replied as he took a deep breath and lowered his body into a stance that would allow him to draw his sword in one fluid motion. He could only use this attack once a day because it not only drained all of his stamina, it also exerted a great toll on his muscles, leaving his entire body feeling as heavy as lead. All the noise in his surroundings disappeared, as if he was the only being in existence. His eyes locked onto General Phobus' body as he waited for Kay's signal to strike. He, as well as the others, knew that interfering with the battle between the generals wasn't the right thing to do. However, they weren't there to be honorable. What they wanted was to win, and, although they would gain infamy for what they were about to do, they were fine with it as long as they achieved their goal. Die mongrel, General Phobus shouted as he delivered a killing blow towards Benjamin, who had decided to take a gamble in order to overpower the protective artifacts the General Phobus was wearing on his body. With his strongest attack, just as the two was about to clash, a faint yet confident voice reached their ears, changing the outcome of the battle. Grand Void, first ultimate form, Keen said softly as his thumb rested on the handle of his sword, splitting the clouds. The skinny swordsman drew his sword so fast that an invisible blade of air, that was as fast as the speed of sound, sliced the trees in front of him in half, and traveled towards General Phobus, hitting his halberd, and making the ranker lose his balance. Benjamin, who had already thrust his spear towards his enemy, no longer had the leeway to pull back, and simply continued his strike, with the intention of ending his enemy's life. However, just as his attack hit General Phobus' chest, a metallic ring reverberated in the air, as one of the general's artifacts shattered, saving his life from Benjamin's killing blow. Even so, General Phobus still shouted in pain because even if his artifact blocked Benjamin's deadly strike, it failed to completely mitigate the force behind the attack completely. Second, who saw all of this was about to go to General Phobus' aid, when General Fahad blocked his path. Just as the vice-general was about to force his way through his opponent to help his lord, he saw something out of the corner of his eye that made his face turn pale. A 4-meter-tall white boar emerged from the bushes and impaled General Phobus back with its deadly tusk, making the latter gasp in pain and surprise from the sudden attack that came from his blind spot. Unfortunately, the general's enchanted armor was very tough, preventing Sai from embedding its tusk deep within the ranker's body. However, it was enough. After successfully sneak attacking its opponent, Sai tossed the general to the side and ran back towards the bushes in order to hide. The general not dying from its attack was part of its calculation, but Sai wasn't betting on its attack to kill General Phobus. No, it had prepared a different tool to kill the general, and that was none other than poison. Kay's grandpa, Maximilian, was very good at making medicine. However, the saint also had other hobbies aside from crafting jewelry, weapons, and armor, and one of them was concocting poisons. After giving the sacred white lotus to Maximilian, in order to make a cure for the purple plague that ravished the borders of the Six Kingdoms, the saint gave Sai a poison that was effective against a rancor. However, it was only a minuscule amount. What it did was slowly paralyze the rancor's body, preventing them from even lifting a finger. Although it wasn't fatal, it was very effective. General Phobus, who was preparing to continue his fight against Benjamin, noticed that his movements were starting to become sluggish. A minute later, he was having trouble lifting his weapon because his hands were no longer listening to him. Finally, General Phobus grunted as he fell face first to the ground, unable to overcome the paralysis that had spread throughout his entire body. Sai, who was watching this scene from its hiding place, didn't do anything reckless, and simply applied the remaining poison on its tusk. Just like Lux, it knew that General Phobus wasn't the greatest threat in the battle. Now that one of their opponents was down for the count, it locked its eyes on the vice-general, who had killed it, and made its baby slime, Fei, cry. If there was one area where Sai and Lux were alike, it was that they both carried grudges, and Sai would definitely not be able to sleep properly until it had managed to have its revenge on the enemy who made it lose its stats and money. Get the latest CHTers on N. Velben, calm. With General Phobus incapacitated, General Fahad and Benjamin focused all their attention to the vice-general of the Amarian army. Everyone knew that as long as Second was killed, the campaign on the Eastern Front would finally end. Surrender now, or prepare to fight us both, Benjamin said. That's right, General Fahad stated. The outcome is already decided. There's no need for you to die. Second gave General Phobus' body a sidelong glance before shifting his attention to the two rankers who were in front and behind him. He knew that if he said no, the two rankers would attack him at the same time in an attempt to kill him. However, instead of feeling anxious, the vice-general of the Amarian army chuckled as if he found the situation funny. If you think you can kill me, then go ahead and try, Second replied. I'd like to see how the two of you can put me down together. Arrogant fool, Benjamin shouted. Since you're courting death, then we will give it to you. General Fahad and Benjamin exchanged glances, and both of them charged at Second at the same time. Brandishing their weapons together, they planned to use a coordinated attack to leave Second with no room to evade, allowing them to cut him down. However, something unexpected happened. Their attacks missed their target because Second jumped high up in the air. The vice-general of the Amarian army then held his sword with both hands before swinging it down with his full power. Rend my foes to oblivion, Second roared. Blade of the Forsaken. The sword in Second's hand turned crimson just before he swung it towards the two rankers on the ground, unleashing several crimson wind blades that could instantly cut rank 5 monsters to shreds. Benjamin and General Fahad had no choice but to take a defensive stance and block the incoming strikes, or else both of them would be seriously injured. As soon as Second landed on the ground, he dashed in the direction where General Phobus lay helpless, only to find that his lord's body had suddenly vanished. Benjamin and General Fahad, who managed to block Second's attack, had noticed what their enemy was planning to do. However, just like the vice-general, both of them were surprised to see General Phobus' body no longer in the place where he laid earlier, over 100 meters away from where Second and the two rankers were fighting. General Phobus hatefully glared at the teenagers who had bound his hands and legs with spider webs. His mouth was also sealed shut by a thick web, preventing him from making any sound. Xander, take all of his artifacts, Sai ordered. Make sure to not leave anything behind. We will split it evenly later. Understood. Xander obediently took away all valuable items belonging to the Amarian general, including his clothes, leaving him with only his pants. The general's entire body was paralyzed, so even though he wanted to strangle the weaklings, who were taking away all of his valuables, he couldn't do anything to them. So, who wants to kill him? Sai asked. It doesn't matter who lands the final blow. We all get the same rewards anyway. The teenagers glanced at each other before looking at Sai. It is beneath me to kill someone who is incapable of defending themselves, Keen stated. In truth, he said that to cover the fact that he could not use his sword arm for the remainder of the day as a consequence for using an attack that exceeded his current strength. Right now, his arm was numb and a bit swollen. All new Hapters NNV, Ulben, calm. If Keen were to force himself to attack, it was possible that his bones would break, making him unable to wield his sword again for a very long time. I am a barbarian. I like a good fight, Aina replied. But this, although he is my enemy, I don't like to bring dishonor to my family name. Val, who was currently in his giant spider form, raised his front legs and made an X gesture, informing Sai that he didn't want to do it either. Sai then glanced at Henrietta and Malcolm, but both of them shook their heads. Clearly, they also didn't want to deal the final blow to General Phobus, who couldn't even lift a finger to stop them. Fine, I'll do it, Sai said as its body started to grow bigger. Second gear, Hildesvini, a 4-meter-tall black boar with silvery tusks and crimson eyes appeared in front of everyone. Val manipulated his web so that General Phobus' body would rise to the ground and hang in front of Sai, whose deadly tusks were coated with the poison that was meant to cripple rankers. Any last words? Sai asked. General Phobus glared at the annoying boar before shouting with all of his might. However, due to the web covering his lips, the ranker could only let out undecipherable muffled words, which made Sai nod its head in understanding. I gave you a chance to say your last words, and yet you didn't use it well, Sai stated. Pathetic. The spider web covering the general's lips became red as the latter vomited blood due to Kay's insult. He had tried to say something, but since his mouth was covered, his message couldn't be conveyed to anyone. However, despite knowing all of this, the boar still said that he was pathetic. These words made the proud general of the Amarian army vomit blood. Kay's antics were simply aggravating. When he was given the opportunity to say his last words, he wanted to say that he would double whatever rewards the Yellen army promised them as long as they spared his life. Sai moved several meters away from the hanging general before turning around and prepared to charge. Goodbye, General Phobus, Sai said as it stomped its hoof to the ground and charged towards the helpless general, whose eyes had already turned bloodshot. May you find peace in the afterlife? I'm charging. Sai impaled its tusk on the general's body, but due to his high stats, the first strike didn't kill him. The boar wasn't fazed and continued to gorge his body over and over again. Keen and the others frowned because they wanted to give General Phobus a quick death. However, since his rank was higher than them, their attacks were not strong enough to kill him in one strike. They understood that Sai was doing its best to end the general's life as soon as possible and not to torture him to death. But since they were dealing with a ranker whose body had already been refined above the standards of mortals, it still took the boar several strikes before it was able to pierce the general's heart and finally put him out of his misery. Even the rankers who were watching this scene from the entrance of the domain of the fallen winced, because they had imagined themselves to be in the same position as the general, who finally took his last breath. Xander's father, Hector, sighed in his heart as he looked at the boar, whose tusks were now covered in fresh blood. None of them had wanted their high priestess, who was loved by everyone in their tribe, to dirty her hands in such a manner. But this was the path that Sai chose, and their chieftain had agreed to it. Since that was the case, the only thing he could do was watch and see with his own eyes how far Sai would be able to go down the road she had chosen. He wished with all of his heart that, at the end of Kay's journey, she would find the thing that she was looking for, the thing that would allow her to grow not only as an individual, but as the high priestess of their tribe that everyone could be proud of. Second gritted his teeth as he was slowly being pushed back by the two rankers that were now going all out to kill him. With every exchange was new injuries. The two rankers weren't faring any better due to his sharp and precise strikes that drew blood whenever he counterattacked. The elite soldiers who had accompanied General Fahad and Benjamin in battle now focused their attention on the Amarian soldiers, who had now managed to break free from the woodlands and were currently trying to regroup and reform their ranks. The Amarian army had the advantage in numbers, so letting them regroup was something that they couldn't allow no matter what. Fortunately, Luck's one-sided slaughter managed to bite a large chunk out of their forces, allowing the Yellonians to gain the upper hand as they killed the panicking soldiers who were in disarray after losing their commanding officers. A few minutes later, Lux arrived at the scene and saw the intense battle that was happening on the ground. As much as he wanted to help General Fahad and Benjamin to fight against Second, he decided that it was best for him to not intervene. Right now, all three rankers were going all out, aware that even a stray attack could instantly kill an apostle like him. He decided to just watch the battle from above while checking the whereabouts of Sai and the others with his soul book. After locating them, Lux immediately messaged Sai and Keen through their guild chat and asked how Sai managed to kill General Phobus. The boar immediately replied and exaggerated the events that happened, making it look like she had fought a dozen General Phobuses single-handedly. It was at that moment when Lux realized that he had asked the wrong person. Keen, what happened? Lux asked. Sai used some kind of poison that has the ability to paralyze rankers, Keen answered. When General Phobus lost the strength to move, Benjamin and General Fahad clashed with Second. Since their attention was on each other, we used that opportunity to snatch General Phobus under their noses. It was Val who dragged him with his spider web, and we took him away from the battlefield so that Second and General Fahad would not discover us. Sai was the one who gave General Phobus the killing blow and ended his life, allowing us to get the gold rewards from our subquest. Lux was quite amused about how things turned out, but the thing that caught his attention was the poison that could paralyze rankers. Do you have more of that poison, Sai? Lux asked. There's only a little bit left, Sai replied. Do you plan to catch Second? Our quest only grants us rewards in killing generals. I don't think we will get anything from killing him. It's fine. I only want his corpse. Do you still have General Phobus' corpse? Yes. I stored it in my bounty ring. I know that you'll want to get his body since he is a ranker. Lux nodded his head in satisfaction after seeing Kay's reply. Good job. All of you, return to the battlefield. We'll see if we can help General Fahad and Benjamin kill Second. The half-elf narrowed his eyes as he looked at the battle that was still ongoing below him. Although Second was at a disadvantage, the two Yelonian rankers didn't underestimate him because he was truly a strong fighter. Lux and the others also didn't underestimate him because he was the one that slaughtered them without even breaking a sweat. Sigh. I have a plan, Lux stated. However, it will be very risky. Since you have already coated your tusks with the poison, you are the only one that can cripple Second. If you fail, you will die and be kicked out of the sacred dungeon. Are you willing to take the risk? The boar didn't reply right away, as if weighing the pros and cons. A minute later, Sai finally made its decision and sent a message to the guild chat. Tell me about your plan first, Sai said. I'll decide if I will accept it or not after hearing the details. Lux didn't hold back and told Sai the details of the plan he had in mind. Keen, who was able to participate in their discussion, frowned because the plan the half-elf proposed was indeed quite risky. However, he had to admit that the chances of the plan succeeding was quite high. If you die, I promise to share half of whatever rewards I gain in this dungeon with you when the campaign is over. Lux promised. Up Ted chapters and in Velben. Calm. There's no need to share anything, Sai replied. Because I won't die. The boar had analyzed Lux's plan step by step and saw nothing wrong with it. Yes, there was risk involved, but the boar was confident that it would be able to execute the plan perfectly. Feel free to stop if ever you feel that your life is in danger, Lux stated. We can always start over, but losing you this early will be a big blow to our manpower. Relax, Sai commented. I got this. After finalizing their plan, Sai and the rest positioned themselves at the very edge of the woodlands, using the trees as cover. Einar, Val, Xander, Henrietta, and Malcolm were spread out around Sai and Keen, who should be defended in this strategy. Right now, the swordsman could no longer fight, and Sai was the one that needed to deal the final blow. Because of this, they were at the center of the formation, protected from all sides by their comrades, who had also been briefed on the plan that they were going to execute. Lux once again shifted his attention to the battle that was happening on the ground. What they planned to do was let General Fahad and Benjamin exhaust Second first, so that the vice-general wouldn't be able to react on time once they started their operation. They couldn't afford to commit a single mistake. Because of this, everyone focused on the role they were going to play and ensure that Sai would be able to deliver the blow they needed in order to incapacitate the vice-general, whose strength exceeded everyone on the battlefield. After clashing with General Fahad and Benjamin for a few minutes, Second realized that he was at a great disadvantage. Even though he was slightly stronger than General Fahad, it was impossible for him to defeat two rankers at the same time. The only reason why he was able to last when up against two opponents was because of his speed that allowed him to avoid most of their attacks by a hair's breadth. Even so, he still sustained some injuries because General Fahad and Benjamin realized that he was truly a threat that they needed to put down to prevent future problems from arising. I should just escape, Second thought. Since Phobus' whereabouts are unknown, there is no reason for me to stay here anymore. Second assumed that because of Phobus' rank and position within the Amarian kingdom, the Yellen army would spare him. Captured generals during wartime were usually used as bargaining chips or used for ransom. He hoped that the Yellen army just took General Phobus' body away while he was distracted to prevent him from rescuing his master. Just as he was about to make his escape, he felt a powerful force pulling him towards the Jade Golem, who had suddenly appeared dozens of meters away from the two rankers, whom he wanted to escape from. It was at that moment that a metallic ring reverberated in the surroundings as Second was forced to summon a shield in his left hand to block Benjamin's attack while parrying General Fahad's attack with his sword. Lux had realized that some rankers were able to resist the power of Duel X to a certain extent, but in the end, they would still be forced to exchange blows with the one that cast the skill at them. The half-elf was creating an opportunity for General Fahad and Benjamin to give Second grievous injuries, while the latter was being distracted by his summons. With an angry roar, Second unleashed a powerful aura, repelling the two rankers who were still not aware of what was happening to their enemy. The vice-general of the Amarian army realized that this was probably the same thing that happened to General Phobus earlier, which made him grit his teeth in anger. Damn you! Second roared as he charged towards Orion, with the intention of cutting the Jade Golem in half. The Jade Golem took one step backwards as he pulled his arm back in order to meet the ranker using his strongest attack. Lux, who was observing this battle in the air, sneered at the ranker who was just a few meters away from Orion. The half-elf knew that Orion would only be able to last for a short time after he and Second clashed. Because of this, Lux had decided to make the sacrifice of his Jade Golem count, and placed a deadly trap for the ranker whom they wanted to kill with every fiber of their being. Beside the Jade Golem's feet, several bone bombs, as well as blast bombs were ready, waiting to blast the vice-general of the Amarian army to oblivion. Aiko, Fei, let's do it, Lux ordered. The two slimes activated their skills, synchronizing with the half-elf's order. Boom boom boom. Just before Second and Orion were about to clash, a powerful explosion that shook the battlefield erupted right under the vice-general's feet, making the latter suffer from serious injuries. However, it didn't end there. Because his stance was disrupted by the explosions that happened under his feet, Orion's Jade Fist smashed onto the side of Second's face, sending him flying. Blood spilled from Second's lips as he flew backwards from the force of Orion's punch. Just as he was about to land on the ground, he saw a white boar charging in his direction from the corner of his eye. I won't let you. Second's eyes turned bloodshot as he forcefully moved his right hand to slice the opportunistic boar in half with his sword. However, his sword arm paused mid-air, as he felt another strong attraction coming from his side. Pazuzu had activated his Duel X, making Second pause in his attempt to strike the white boar, who was charging straight at him, while he was unable to move his body. I'm charging. Sai roared as it collided with the ranker's body, piercing its tusk through Second's armor, and embedding it 2 inches deep inside the vice-general's body. Sai tossed the ranker upwards and continued to charge towards the woodlands. It had already accomplished its goal, and it only needed to wait a short while for the poison to take effect. *T. Second thought, realizing that this was the exact same thing that had happened to General Phobus earlier. However, what happened to General Phobus was nothing compared to what happened to him next. While Second was still in mid-air, a spear flew in his direction and pierced his back, making him cry out in pain. He knew that if he didn't escape now, he would not have a chance to live another day. As soon as his body crashed towards the ground, the vice-general immediately used his life-saving artifact and disappeared from where he lay, making General Fahad, Benjamin, and Lux's comrades curse the near-dead ranker in their hearts. The bastard managed to escape. Lux opened up his soul book and tried to search for Second's whereabouts, but the map of the battlefield was too chaotic, showing red and green dots everywhere, making him unable to pinpoint the vice-general's location. What a slippery opponent, Badivir muttered as he circled in the air, hoping to catch a glimpse of their enemy, who had vanished without a trace. Master, your orders. Lux frowned before heaving a sigh. Let's eliminate the small fries for now, Lux replied. Although their generals are no longer around, they are still a threat to the Yellen army. Understood, my lord. Badivir nodded before maneuvering the dragon towards the woodlands where the most heated battle between the two forces were still underway. General Fahad and Benjamin glanced at each other before heading the direction that Lux was going. Their men had sacrificed a lot in order for them to break through the enemy's formation, so they needed to help them eliminate as many enemies as they could in order to end the war on the eastern front of the battlefield. 1,000 meters under the earth, the vice-general of the Amarian army coughed up blood as the effect of the poison started to take place. His life-saving artifact allowed him to forcefully teleport him underground by creating a small space big enough for his entire body to fit in. Second laid on his back in pitch-black darkness as the poison paralyzed his entire body. As soon as the paralysis in my body wears off, I will immediately leave this place, Second thought. It has been a while since I got seriously injured in a campaign. This was not the first time that Second had used this strategy in order to hide from his opponents. When he was still serving General Phobus' grandfather as his aide, there had been several close calls when he was forced to escape in order to preserve his life. He had managed to survive each and every time, and he believed that he would be able to persevere this time as well. Suddenly, Second felt something falling onto the side of his face. Soil. Is the battle happening on the surface that intense? Second thought as the loosened earth continued to fall on his cheeks, forehead, nose, and mouth. A few seconds later, the soil stopped falling on his head. However, just before Second thought that everything was over, a faint light appeared in front of him, illuminating the dark space where he was in. Second's pupil shrank, and a feeling of anxiety rose in his chest when he saw something that he thought he would never see in his life. Right above his head, a baby slime was looking down on him, with a calm expression on her face. The two stared at each other, and with every second that passed, the vice-general's heartbeat became faster and faster. Aiko then summoned a red steel ball in her hand as she gazed at the ranker who killed her papa in the past. NNNNH. Second tried to shout, no, but since he could no longer move his lips, only muffled sounds managed to escape his lips. If he could still move, it would be very easy for him to kill such a weak monster, but right now, his fate was dependent on the baby slime's mood, making him realize that he no longer had control over his fate. Eiko still had a calm expression when she unceremoniously dropped the blast bomb on Second's face. At that moment, time seemed to move in slow motion, making Second see the blast bomb slowly falling towards him. However, just as the blast bomb was about to hit his face, he saw the baby slime open her lips to say something. Although no sound came out of her mouth, the ranker was able to read her lips, understanding the word that she had said to him. Fecker. That was the word that the baby slime said, and the last thing Second saw before the red steel ball landed on his face and exploded at point-blank range. Deep under the earth, an explosion erupted. However, since it was so deep in the ground, no one on the surface heard Second's muffled scream. The baby slime mercilessly tossed several bombs at the person who was responsible for killing one of the most important people in her life. It was not only Lux and Sai who carried grudges. Eiko was the same, and just like them, she wouldn't stop until she saw the person whom she wanted to kill die in front of her very eyes. An hour later, the remnants of the Amarian army that managed to escape ran as if their lives depended on it. As much as General Fahad and Benjamin wanted to kill them all, they simply didn't have enough manpower to do so. Their side had also suffered quite a few casualties, as well as serious injuries, but the morale of the Yellen army was at an all-time high as they shouted their cries of triumph, making the fleeting Amarians hear their victorious shouts as they escaped from the jaws of death. There were also hundreds of soldiers who had surrendered. All of them were herded to the side, while General Fahad and Benjamin listened to the reports of their commanders, tallying the numbers of injured and dead in the battle that just ended. Lux's team, with the exception of Sai, Keen, and Xander, had joined the Yellen army in the fighting against the Amarian soldiers. Sai and Keen had pushed themselves too much in the battle and were no longer in condition to join the fight. Xander, Fei, Ishtar, and Lazarus stayed with them in order to guard them to prevent anyone from taking advantage of their weakened state. While the others were resting, Lux was looking for Eiko, who had suddenly disappeared without his notice. Eiko, Lux shouted. Where are you, Eiko? The half-elf shouted for the baby slime's name over and over again for nearly half an hour before he heard Eiko's reply inside his mind. Ha! Lux immediately locked on the direction where he sensed Eiko's presence and urged Bedivere to fly in that direction. A few minutes later, they found the baby slime perched on top of a tree, waiting for Lux to pick her up. Ha! Eiko happily jumped towards Lux, and the half-elf caught the baby slime with both of his hands. Where did you go, Eiko? Lux asked. I was worried about you. Ha! Eiko replied as she told Lux where she went and what she did. The baby slime was like an obedient child, who nonchalantly confessed all the bad things she had done to her parents, and the things she said made the half-elf break into cold sweat. You did what? Lux exclaimed as soon as Eiko finished her tale. Eiko, don't do something like that again without telling me. That was very dangerous. Eiko blinked once then twice, before nodding her head in understanding. Ha! Promise me you won't do something dangerous again without my approval. You already died once, Iris, and I definitely don't want to see you die a second time. Eiko became a bit teary-eyed as she nodded her head in acknowledgement of Lux's words. So, she made a promise to not do anything dangerous again without her papa's consent. Ha! Good girl. For now, keep Second's body. We will tell General Fahad and Benjamin in private that we managed to kill the two highest commanding officers of the Amarian army. I'm sure that they will be very happy to hear the news. Eiko nodded. The half-elf then placed Eiko back on top of his head as he made his way towards the place where Tsai, Keen, Xander, and Fei were currently resting. It had been a long night, and the half-elf could feel that his body was starting to feel as heavy as lead. After the adrenaline rush ended and seeing that Eiko was safe and sound, the half-elf just wanted to go back to his tent to sleep. He and the others hadn't had much rest for the past few days, and he was looking forward to sleeping for 10 to 12 hours, in order to rest his tired and aching body. When Lux appeared in the small clearing, he saw Tsai lying sideways on the ground, snoring like there was no tomorrow. Fei, who was lying on the side of Kay's face, was also sound asleep. It seemed that even Kay's loud snoring wasn't enough to wake her up, which proved how exhausted the golden slime was after her first campaign with her master. Keen, on the other hand, was seated while leaning against a tree. His sword rested on his lap, allowing the skinny swordsman to draw it as soon as danger appeared in front of them. Although his entire right arm felt numb, he would rather break his bones than die helplessly under the blade of their enemies. Is everything alright? Lux asked. Yes, Xander replied. The battle has ended. Einar, Val, Henrietta, and Malcolm went to see the people that surrendered to check if some of our acquaintances are mixed in among them. Lux sighed in his heart before sitting beside a tree, using it as a support to hold his exhausted body. We came together as allies, Lux thought. Now, we stand on opposing sides. Seeing that the half-elf was deep in thought, Xander approached him to ask the question that mattered to him. If we do see our acquaintances, what do we do with them? Xander asked. Lux didn't answer right away. Instead, he lightly patted Aiko's head, who was now resting on his lap. A few minutes of silence descended on the clearing as Lux pondered about what to do with them. As the leader of the group, he knew that it was up to him to decide their fate. Whether they would receive mercy or not was entirely up to him. Let's discuss it after the others return, Lux said after organizing his thoughts. Xander no longer insisted on getting a definite answer from Lux. He knew that this was not an easy decision to make because it would affect the half-elf's relationship with the factions waiting for them outside the domain of the fallen. Half an hour later, Einar, Val, Henrietta, and Malcolm returned, and all of them had solemn expressions on their faces. How many? Lux asked without even raising his head. Although he didn't ask a specific question, Einar and the others understood what he was talking about. 6, Einar replied. 2 from Skystead Alliance, 2 from the Zinner War Pact, 1 from the Storm Dragons Guild, and 1 from the 6 Kingdoms. Lux sighed internally after hearing Einar's reply. 6, Lux muttered. If only the representatives of the 6 Kingdoms weren't able to view what was happening inside the dungeon, Lux would definitely not bat an eye and execute them without fail. Unfortunately, his relationships with the other factions were already strained. It was one thing for their representatives to die in the midst of battle. No one would find fault with that because this was a battle between 2 warring nations, and it was only natural for people to die on the battlefield. However, the fighting had stopped, and they had already surrendered. If Lux were to kill them now, he would definitely cross the bottom line of the factions that were watching through the eyes of their representatives. What should we do with them? Einar asked. Even the barbarian prince knew the political consequences of Lux's decision. In truth, he was quite happy that he wasn't the one making the hard decision. If it was him, he would definitely not make a move that would anger the different factions, who could definitely make his life difficult in both Solais and Elysium. I'll ask General Fahad to send them to prison and ensure that they will no longer get in the way of our mission, Lux replied as he scanned the faces of the people around him. You guys won't have any issues with that, right? Lux's question wasn't only directed to his teammates, but to those who were watching them from the entrance of the domain of the fallen. This was war, so his actions were in line with the rules of war, and no one can find fault in it. Although the different factions whose representatives had been captured didn't like the current situation, they had no choice but to begrudgingly accept Lux's decision. If they were to find fault with how things reached this point, they could only blame their people for not choosing to side with Lux, when he had given them a chance to switch sides to the Yellen army. Einar, Val, Xander, Henrietta, and Malcolm were relieved because Lux didn't choose the option that would burn bridges between them and the different factions that belonged to Solais and Elysium. As long as they didn't cross the other party's bottom line, they could still work together in the future. 2 hours later, the dead bodies of the Yellen army were taken by their comrades in order to be given a proper burial. Lux, on the other hand, asked General Fahad to leave the dead bodies of the Amarians because he still had a need for them. The general stared at the half-elf with a solemn expression and was on the verge of telling him something, but, in the end, General Fahad decided to hold back the words he wanted to say and just reluctantly nodded his head at the half-elf's request. Although he didn't like how the battle progressed a few hours ago, he had to admit that if the half-elf didn't play the villain, their chances of winning were non-existent. Lux and the others returned to the Yellen camp, leaving the half-elf's undead army and golems working together to strip the dead Amarian soldiers of their belongings. Their storage rings, weapons, and armor were all taken from them and given to General Fahad. Although Lux liked treasures, he didn't feel like looting the dead bodies of the people that he had killed so viciously. Even Sai didn't raise any protest about the half-elf's decision. The boar who would shamelessly collect weapons and armors didn't even want to touch a single piece of equipment from the bodies of the dead Amarian soldiers. The only thing it took was General Phobus equipment and storage rings because they belonged to it by right. Sai was the one that made it possible for the general to be crippled, and no one had the right to take its hard-earned treasures from it. Lux didn't tell them about what happened to Second because he didn't want the other factions to know that the vice-general was also dead. He planned to revive the vice-general and make him one of the members of his covenant. Although it was regrettable that Second's rank would deteriorate, Lux knew that adding the deadly strategist of his undead army would increase his combat prowess drastically. For the time being, all of them rested without worry because they knew that the eastern battlefield was won. However, this was just the beginning. Even though they managed to win against their enemies, the Yellen army had suffered countless losses, making them unable to reinforce the other battlefields because their remaining army needed to defend the territory they fought so hard to protect.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.